Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bloom. I am very excited for this upcoming guest that we have on the show today. We've had quite a few people express an interest in becoming an author, writing their own book, and telling their own story. And that's what we're all about here at Bloom. And so I am so very excited that we have our next guest, CaTyra Polland. That is an 8-time published author, and she owns an editing boutique called Love for Words. And she specializes in helping people develop their story and find their audience. So I really thought it was important for us to have this discussion because, here at Bloom, we're all about getting out of your own way and finding amazing women to share their experience with us and partner with them so we can become our truest, highest version of ourselves. And so I want to go ahead and open up and welcome her to the virtual stage so we can get this discussion started. Let's go ahead and bring her out. Hello. Can you hear me?
Okay. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is going to be a great conversation. I want to go ahead and welcome everyone, Jacqueline, Kim. For anyone that's new to our platform, this is a very interactive experience. The whole intention behind having this discussion is so to make sure that you can get the answers, the questions answered that you need. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box. We want to make sure that you have all of your questions answered by the time we end this discussion. So, CaTyra, thank you again for being here. Can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about you and your story? What's your story?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is CaTyra Polland. I'm the CEO of Love for Words. I started editing in 2017. I've always loved reading and writing. And I used to participate in the Book It program with Pizza Hut, where you get the free personal pan after you read so many books. So it's something that has been in me since I was a young child. So when my friend, said she was looking for an editor, she's also a publisher. I did a sample edit for her, and she loved it and started referring me to her clients. And then I decided to start my boutique, Love for Words. It came naturally to me. Again, I've always loved reading and writing. I started writing poetry in middle school. So Love for Words is a natural transition for me. I'm a Rochester, New York native. My working background is nonprofit, but of course I am also an entrepreneur, and I publish nonfiction books as well. I've published my own books, and I've also been a contributor to several anthologies. So again, that's something that I really love to do, and I'm always honored to work with other women like myself who are authorpreneurs who need help and guidance through the self-publishing process and need help with polishing their manuscripts.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I am loving this. Kim, thank you for being here. Debbie, Tracy. Yeah, this is going to be great. So I just want to reiterate. So you're an 8-time published author.
Yes.
That is fantastic. One of the things that I love about that is because we always say, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And so, seeing you is very inspiring. Shayna, thank you so much for being here. And we're so happy that you obviously have gotten out of your own way and, took many steps forward to achieving your goals. And so you're also the creator and host of a podcast as well called Editors Knows Best, right? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Editor Knows Best really started as an interview podcast where I interview other authors, literary professionals, editors, publishers, etc., who work in the writing and publishing field. And it has expanded. So some of the episodes just feature myself, and I'm giving tips and information about the editing process, recommendations for working with an editor, the different types of editing, why editing is important. And things like that. So it's really an opportunity to educate, our listeners and the audience about different, aspects of the self-publishing world, and a chance for them to hear from those who have already done what they're aspiring to do. So I started that in 2017. I started that in 2020. So it's been a little bit over a year now. And I have interviewed authors all over the country. I've interviewed an author in India. So it's been a great experience, connecting with others. And really what I wanted to do with Editor Knows Best is highlight, wanted to highlight professionals who look like myself. I really wanted to talk to other Black authors, other professionals of color to get their perspectives, because we know that our perspectives matter and that our stories matter. So I'm always eager to connect with, guests who are sometimes pushed out or excluded, to get their voices heard and to get them the publicity and the acknowledgement that we deserve.
Yes, I love that you mentioned that. And so look at all these future authors in here. I want everybody to let us know deep down inside if you've ever had an interest or a desire to write a book and tell your story. So comment yes or no in the chat box. We want to see your input. So you talked about the importance of people of color being able to tell their own story. And this is it's such an important topic because the people that were with us last week, we sat down with a nonprofit called Read for Unity. And so their main purpose is to distribute books written by people of color. So from your perspective, what is the importance of having diversity in publishing overall?
Yes, I think it's very important that we are sharing stories and experiences that show the diversity of the people, across the globe, the global majority. So I think it's very, I just think it's imperative that we're able to tell our stories from our own perspectives, that we don't have to rely on those outside of our culture or outside of our racial group, outside of our ethnicity to tell our stories, because that automatically changes it. One of the reasons I became an editor is to be able to help authors like myself. So it can be very challenging and uncomfortable as a Black woman to hand your manuscript to a white male or a white female, particularly if you're sharing a personal story. There's always, for me, I always say there's a veil there because of race. It's something that's really important, and it's something that influences every aspect of life. So if I hand my manuscript that has, a name like CaTyra in it to, Katie, who's editing this, Katie comes from a different culture. Katie might not appreciate my name. She might not appreciate the names of my characters. She may not understand Ebonics or African-American vernacular. So she may be judging my manuscript instead of helping me make it better. So that is one of the things that I value the most in making sure that not just people of color, but that everyone has someone who can relate to them, so that if they need their work critiqued, they're getting help, they're getting feedback, they're getting support and encouragement, and not that in addition to judgment. So I just feel like it's really important for us to control the narrative and also make the narrative truthful, because as we know, the way that we're presented is not always accurate. Only certain, aspects of our lives or our persons are presented in the media. They only show us in a certain light. So I think having own media such as podcasts and blogs allows us to change that narrative and make sure we're being reflected respectfully and accurately and in multi-dimensionally, because we are, multi-dimensional just like everyone else. But unfortunately, there's lots of stereotypes about, Black people in the media. So I love to be able to be a part of changing that. Empowering us to tell our own stories and encouraging, others who look like me to tell their stories, because our stories are valid. Our stories are important. Our stories matter. Our stories are beautiful. Our stories are inspirational. So I love being a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're very passionate about what you do. And I was telling you earlier, that really resonates with me. I love when I meet people that are passionate about what they do and they're not just doing it for the money. And so that I think that's wonderful. And I 100% agree with you. We have to own our story. And a lot of times we don't know our own story. But once we do the work to figure out what our story is, I feel like we're become empowered.
For sure.
And we realize that our story, once we, unfold it, it can help other people. And so for me, I used to get annoyed where of course, learning about your history is very important, but it's also important for African Americans, women, minority groups in general, to be casted in roles and
Mhm.
written in books as people who are empowered. And that's just our day-to-day lives. So I'm
Mhm.
so grateful that you're doing this work. So can you tell us what percentage of women are actually authors, and can you break it down, even so for people of color as well?
Yes, so I was able to do a little bit of research. It's the reference is Zippia, and includes 30 million profiles. And according to their database, 47% of authors are women, and about 46.9% are men. So that's pretty close. It's almost an even balance. I found a breakdown of race as well. So it's 80.7% of writers or authors are white, non-Hispanic, and then 6.16% are Black, non-Hispanic, and then there are white Hispanic as well. It looks like that stat got cut off. So I
Mm,
primarily work with Black women authors who are also entrepreneurs. So Black women entrepreneurs here in the United States. I'm sorry, what was the follow-up to that question?
No, I just wanted to know exactly what you told me. So
Okay.
the breakdown, because
Yeah.
the statistics is very important.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
I'm glad that you have that information. 16%. Wow. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. I'm not sure if that's traditional or self-published. I believe it's
okay.
traditional. But there are, of course, there are a lot of us, but we don't necessarily get the exposure that our white counterparts receive. And that's part of the other statistics that I saw as well. And the same applies to women versus men. So women do, have a lot of books, and we publish a lot of books. But when I was looking at some of the other stats, it's the men who tend to get more of the backing from the publishers. They get more money to put for advances. They get more money for marketing their book. So of course there's inequities just like in any industry, but in general, it seems to be pretty even between men and women. But of course, there are other factors that are an advantage or a disadvantage based on your race and gender.
Can you talk to us a little bit more about the whole publishing process?
Mhm.
How does that work? So how does editing, which you do, partner with a publisher for you?
Yes, yes. So, if you're looking to publish a book, of course you're writing the manuscript, and then there's other elements. So you can have what is it called? You can have a beta reader who looks at the book for you and gives you feedback. They won't edit it or anything like that, but they're just someone from your target market who will read it and tell you what they think about it, what they recommend, what resonated with them, what information they understood or had questions about, things like that. So that's an important thing to do, is have a beta reader after you've written your manuscript. After you've had a beta reader and someone look for it, look through it for you just to give you information about the content, then you can move on to the editor, and the editor helps you with, spelling, grammar. Does it make sense? Do you have plot holes? Is it redundant? Are you explaining everything clearly? Are you using language that connects with your target market? So
Mhm.
those are some of the different elements that the editors help with. I won't dive too deeply, but there are different types of editing.
Mhm.
However, I do have a free ebook on my website where I explain the different types of editing. It's Editor Knows Best. So if you go to polandllc.com, you can download the free ebook and get more information about the different types of editing. But at the editing stage, of course, I would work with you, or whatever editor you're working with. They should be giving you feedback, pointing out what you've done well, and also pointing out what could be done better, improvements, suggestions. If they have questions, they'll present that to you in the margin of your manuscript, and based on the type of editing, they'll give you the appropriate feedback. So once you're done with the editor, so you would, well, I guess I'll walk through my process. So you would let me know you're interested. We have there's a form you'll fill out online, a consultation. Most editors
Mhm.
follow this process. So there's a consultation where you'll answer questions about your manuscript, why you wrote it, how long it is, who your target market is, what genre it is, etc. I review that. Then you schedule a phone consultation, and I will follow up on what you shared on your consultation, and just get more clarity. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself. I'll, review the sample edit that you sent me previously. We'll go through that. I'll give you some feedback. And then, of course, we'll decide if we want to move forward. So the most important part of editing is the relationship building piece. So if you're looking for an editor, make sure that you have a consultation with the editor before you sign any contracts or agree to work with them. Don't skip over that part. That consultation is your time to, again, get to know the editor, see if you two click, see if they can edit your genre. So like if you're writing sci-fi and the editor says, I hate sci-fi, that's going to be a red flag. Probably, yeah. So it's not just an opportunity for the editor to talk to you about your work, but as the author, that's your opportunity to connect with that editor to make sure it is a good fit. You don't want to assume. So if you have questions, that's your time to ask, what, do you edit nonfiction or fiction? What are your specialties? What is your background? What type of editing do you offer? And those are things that the editor should be forthcoming about. If they're hiding that or they're not willing to answer, you might want to consider working with a different editor. So make sure you take advantage of that consultation piece. I learned over the years that is necessary, because in the past I didn't have a consultation. So I would edit a manuscript and not even know what the expectations were from the client. So I learned along the way that I need to have that. It's very important. It saves me time from editing and the client money. So please do your due diligence and make sure you, at the very least, have a conversation with the editor before you decide to work with them. So once we've had that consultation, if you decide, yes, this is what I want, we do the contract, the invoice, and then I work on the manuscript and I send it when I'm done. Some editors send you updates throughout the process. For me, that slows me down, so I don't do that. But again, when you have the consultation, you can ask the editor, do you send, updates throughout, or do you just send me all the edits at the end? And then depending on their answer, you can decide whether or not you want to work with them. So when I'm done, I send it to the author, and I would just encourage all the authors that just because it's been looked at by an editor doesn't mean you don't have to look at it again. So even when you get it back, you should still go through it again. Editors make mistakes too. So don't leave it all in the hands of the editor, because at the end of the day, it's your book. So you might open the edits and see something, wrong. You have to take responsibility for looking at the edits, not just accepting whatever the editor has put in there. So you can email them and say, hey, I noticed this typo, or you changed the spelling of this name and it's supposed to be the other spelling that I had originally. Or maybe, I don't know, they added something that you don't agree with. So as the author, you have the authority to go back to the editor and say, okay, I'm not happy with X, Y, Z, and then continue that conversation until you're satisfied. So don't just assume that what your editor did, you'll be satisfied with. So you should always review whatever you get back from the editor. Once you and the editor are on the same page and you say, this is all good to go, I don't have any other changes or updates, then you can move into working with a publisher. So there's different types of publishers. There's traditional publishing, where you will work with a company like Penguin House. So they would have your manuscript. They would assign an editor to work on it. They would assign someone to take care of the printing of the books and the formatting and the copyright and ISBN. And of course, they receive X% of the book royalties. So with the traditional route, there's less control for the author. But if you decide to self-publish, you have much more creative control. So you get to choose who your editor is. You get to choose your own, illustrator. You can find someone to format the book for you. You can choose, who your marketer is or how it's marketed, where you get them printed. So I know a lot of people choose to go the self-publishing route because they want that control. They don't want to share their royalties. They don't want to have to abide by a traditional publishing contract. So self-publishing is an excellent option for those of you who don't mind being boots on the ground with the production of your book. So another type of publisher is a hybrid publisher. And you maintain, as the author, you maintain all of your book royalties. They don't get a percentage of your book royalties. You will pay them for their services, though. So they typically will get the ISBN for you, which is like a social security number for books. They'll also register the copyright for you. They will get your book up on Amazon. They'll do the formatting. And those are the key things that they take care of. It varies by publisher, but those are generally the things that a hybrid publisher would take care of. And the benefit of that, again, is that you still maintain all your royalties. You don't have to give them a percentage of your royalties, unless, of course, that hybrid publisher asks for that, but most don't. And again, I would also encourage you to have a consultation with the publisher before you move forward with them, to ask them, how long have you been publishing? What's your experience publishing? Of course, you can ask about their rates and make sure that you two are on the same page. Some of the hybrid publishers also do marketing for their clients. So you might be able to have that as part of your package deal. So again, when you have that consultation with the publisher, just make sure you're on the same page. And the most important part is that relationship building. So that's really the process of the self-publishing. You should definitely do the editing before you move to the self-publishing phase. Yeah, I think that's a succinct way of explaining it.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowledge is power. So, we may have someone here that this may not be the next phase for you, but you never know. A few years down the line, this may be where you need to be, and you may feel like you're ready to actually tell your story. So I want to ask you, let's take it back to when you wrote your first book. What was that process like for you? And were you fearful initially? And what was the title? What was, tell us about this as well.
Yes. So my first book is Professionalism, What's That? And it's really a resource guide for those who are new professionals or maybe just need a refresher on professionalism. So it covers like conflict management. It talks about, resumes. It also talks about professional development, how to conduct yourself, at a holiday party versus in the office versus at home, what's expected of you, how you should behave in, a work environment versus if you're with your friends. So I wanted to create the resource. It's under 100 pages. So I wanted to create something quick that someone could reference who maybe forgot or never learned it. I never took a professionalism class. I know it's not a standard class that's offered, unfortunately. So I wanted that to be there in place of, a class until we do, progress to where we have a professionalism 101 class in our high schools and our colleges. The book is there in the meantime. I also even talk about code switching and what that is and how it impacts the global majority. So it's basically like adapting who you are, what you look like, what you sound like, what you do based on who you're with, who you're around, the environment you're in, and the society. So one of the things I talk about is like even hair code switching. So, if you're an individual with kinkier hair, the expectation is that you're going to straighten it or cover it or relax it or wear a wig or weave, etc. And I just talk about how that can be suffocating, to be told that who you are naturally is not good enough. But I also talk about, the pros of code switching, that it does typically come with promotions. You're considered more likable. You're considered, you've assimilated. So people are more likely to be more comfortable around you. But I didn't want to ignore the fact that there are cons to code switching. So that's another chapter in the book that is directly related to professionalism. Like I talk about accents and, how that, influences how people treat you or how you're perceived. Also even talk about names, like what it means to see CaTyra Polland on the top of a resume versus Catherine Jones. Like, what
Yeah. Or
implications are
Zakia.
there? Exactly, exactly. So the book is really, trying to cover like it's not very long, but it covers different elements of professionalism. I also talk about like informational interviews. What are informational interviews? How can they benefit you? How does that help you? How can you use them to advance your career? Things like that. So during that process, it wasn't really too scary for me. I learned professionalism from my parents. I mean, they worked my whole life. So, I saw them get up and go to work. I saw what they wore to work versus when they were at home. I did the take your daughter to work day. So I was in the environment and saw what people were wearing and how they behaved. So I was, blessed and lucky enough to observe that professionalism, but not everybody has that in their back pocket. So I wanted to help those, again, who never learned it or, need a refresher about it. What I did is I actually selected my chapter titles first, and then I filled in the information. That was extremely helpful for me.
Yeah.
So it kind of took the guessing work out of it. So, you came up with all the chapters and because I knew what topics I wanted to talk about, and then I worked backwards. So that's a tip, for those of you who are trying to write a book and maybe stuck, figure out the topics, make those your chapter titles, and then the rest should be pretty easy because you'll know exactly what you need to research. So that made it really easy for me. Again, I've always loved reading and writing, so I didn't have too much anxiety around it. I think it took me 1 to 3 months to get, do the research.
Wow.
Yeah, to do the research and get it written. I had some beta readers who gave me some feedback. And then I, sent it on to the publisher. So the writing process didn't take me that long. And then the publishing process maybe took a month. So a couple of months. But the good thing, about being self-published too is it's a lot easier to revise your books. So I just revised it. Like I have a brand new cover. And then I expanded the code switching chapter and updated some of the language and just went through and had it re-edited. So even if you publish a book, you can always go back and change it, which is what I did for whatever reason. If you want to update it or, you want to remove something, if you're self-published, it's much easier to do that. So that's what I did with mine. And now the cover, my original cover featured a white female. And I've updated the cover. So now there's one black male, one black female on the cover. So that was really important for me because it's a part of changing the narrative. Typically when you hear the word professionalism, the default will probably be a white male or a white female. As we considered that the ultimate professional. But of course, we know that's not true. So I think it was really important for me to have a different cover that, showed that there are different images and portrayals of what professionalism is and who a professional can be.
Yeah, this sounds like a great book for, like you said, a high school student, someone going off to college or accepting their first summer job or even professional job after college or high school. And so what I definitely am getting for this discussion, so a lot of people, I'm looking at some of the conversations in the chat. So Shane is telling she loves this. Felicia, thank you so much to be here. Sean, yes, you definitely need to start writing again. This is very motivating. That's awesome. But so what I'm getting here is that there may be some people that are listening to this conversation right now who may feel overwhelmed. They may think that they have to produce a 300-page document. But you can, like you said, create a guide, for example, a how-to book that may be a good way to start.
For sure. Absolutely. Ebooks are a really great way to start. So I just worked on an ebook. It's from an author who has a special needs daughter, and the ebook is 19 pages. So if you struggle with writing for long periods of time, or if you feel overwhelmed when you are expected to write something that is lengthy, you can start small. And the good thing about that is you can always expand it. So down the line, this author could, use her ebook to make a longer book. Or the
Mm-hmm.
other option too is like audiobooks. So maybe maybe you don't want to write a novel, maybe you want to write something shorter, but you know your audience prefers to listen to it. So you can write the ebook and then record the audiobook, or hire a voice professional to record it for you, which is what I did for one of my ebooks. So it doesn't have to be lengthy. I mean, you could even start with a blog. So maybe you're not ready for an ebook, but you write a blog and then you get feedback and you do some more research and decide, you know what, I want to turn this blog into a 12-page ebook. And then you get more feedback and do some more research and you say, okay, now it's time to turn this 12-page ebook into a 100-page book. So it doesn't, you don't have to start. Nobody starts at the top. We all have
Yeah.
to start from down here and work our way up. So you do what's comfortable for you and move at your own pace, but don't feel like you have to write a novel right out the gate.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice too. And so I see Jacqueline saying, she's saying, is there a such thing as a ghostwriter?
Yes, there is.
Yeah. Yeah. Can
Yes.
you tell us about that?
Yeah. So basically, a ghostwriter is someone who writes the content but does not get credit for it. So, for example, yeah, you could come to me and I could ghostwrite an ebook for you, but you would be listed as the author. You would get all the credit. If they wanted to speak to the author, that will be you, not myself. What I will say is, just like with anything, is to vet your ghostwriters. I don't know if you all heard about B. Simone, but she had a ghostwriter write her book. I think it was that it wasn't written that well. But I think it was last year or earlier this year. But basically, there was an issue with the manuscript that the ghostwriter wrote. So, like with anything, your editor, your publisher, any service, personal or professional, you want to vet that ghostwriter. You want to ask for samples. You want to make sure that they can deliver what they're promising to deliver. So don't just assume because they say they're a ghostwriter that they're able to deliver what you need or what you want. Ask for samples, ask for proof, ask for testimonials to make sure you're getting, the service that you're expecting.
Yeah, definitely. And it looks like, so we have another comment. I don't consider myself a writer, but I do have a story to tell. I would like to record my stories and get someone to write it. Is that possible? Yes. So, yep,
Yes.
that's it.
Yes, that's
That's,
considered a transcriber or transcription.
oh,
So, yep, you can definitely do that. There are people who, offer that service. That is something that I do as well. But yes, there are plenty of transcribers out there who will be happy to write it. If you record it, they'll write it for you. So you can surely do that. That is different from a ghostwriter. So the ghostwriter actually writes it. And then on the other side, the transcriber would be the one to type what you've already said, verbally.
awesome. All right. That's awesome. Everybody's getting the answers that they need. So I have to also ask you, how do you help people see value in their own authentic story?
Yeah, so one of the things that I value is making sure that I am offering words of encouragement, and
Mhm.
also pointing out what the author or writer has done well. So sometimes editors get a bad rap that all we do is mark up your papers with red ink. But
Mm,
we're here to, help you. We're here to be a companion, not your opponent. So I always make a point of, sharing what I enjoy about the manuscripts that I edit. I always put in the, in the margin, I will say, I really love this statement, or you did a great job with explaining the details here, or even something personal like, oh, I can really relate to this. This happened to me. Or I'll just put something like wow, and maybe a smiley face, or wow and a sad face, depending on what they've shared, just to humanize the editing process, because we're not there
mhm.
to, make you feel bad about what you've written, or scold you, or only point out what you've done wrong, or what should be changed. We're also there, and for me, more importantly, to offer that guidance and the words of encouragement, and empower you. I want you to feel. I want you to feel inspired to tell your own story. I want you to know that your
Mhm.
story is valuable. That you have a right to tell your story. That you have a right to tell your story the way you want it told. So it's very important for me to be cognizant of the author's feelings. And as someone who was an 8-time published author, I know what it's like to work with an editor. I know what it's like to hand over my manuscript and wait for that critique. So I'm always sensitive to that. Like, okay, do you remember when you had to hand over your manuscript? How did you?
Yes.
So when I work with my clients, I'm always sensitive to that. Like, okay, yes, I'm here to, help them make this better. I'm not here to, discourage them. So I think that's very important for editors to keep in mind when they're working with their clients, is to have that delicate balance of correction and encouragement.
Yes, that's so true. I love that. Sometimes that's one of the reasons why I started this discussion on here on Bloom, is because sometimes we can idolize people who are successful and think that, someone isn't looking at us the same exact way. And so we're all human, we make mistakes. And so seeing someone for 15 minutes, in a meeting or an hour during the speech does not make them perfect. We all have our stories, and so I just want to mention that because, everyone here has a powerful story to share. And that story frees us because we turn it, instead of it being something negative or hurtful or painful, it becomes something powerful that can create unity amongst other women and Black women of color as well. And so, please just look into the process. CaTyra's mentioned some very amazing tips on how to get started. Have you worked with people who don't consider themselves writers? I mean,
yeah. So I've worked with different entrepreneurs. So I worked with someone who has she's a pastor. So her first love is, the church and the gospel, and learning and sharing the word of God, not necessarily writing. So along the journey, they learn their strengths and they learn their weaknesses. Yeah. And again, I'm there to just, empower them and inspire them and help them along the way. Some of the authors who do come to me, never thought they would write a book, but they had the idea and they're ready to take off. So some of your greatest accomplishments you never envisioned. So there are many things that, I have achieved that weren't necessarily on my list, but they got done because that was my role. That's what I was supposed to do. So I wouldn't worry so much if you don't consider yourself a writer. That's why there are editors. That's why there's publishers and ghostwriters and others who specialize in that to help you. So you don't have to be a good writer to be a successful author. It helps, but that's something that you can learn. You can always learn to be a better writer. There's always room for improvement, and there's always people there and resources and tools there to help you get better at it. So I would not let that deter you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things where if you never do it, you're always going to wonder what if, right? And so, we just want to encourage people. If the thought pops in your head, then it's supposed to be so. So you got to get out of your own way. And get the resources to make things come to fruition. And so that's why we're having this discussion here today. So let me see. How can someone? So what's the typical time frame? You said that it took you about 3 to 6 months. How long does it take the average person? And let's talk about, is it an expensive investment? And how do you help people see value in it?
Well, the length of time really varies. It depends on, where you are in your writing level. Like, are you an English major who, has written extensively already? So you don't require like a long editing process. You can get that done pretty quickly. Are you someone who struggles with writing, who may need more intense editing, which will, of course, extend the amount of time that it takes for the entire process? So it really varies. I've had clients who get their books published in a month, and then clients who are writing novels, it might take, 7 or 8 months. Also, it just depends on the length and, again, the level of writing that you're at, and how much editing it requires. And then the publishing, again, with traditional, that can take a longer amount of time just because, there's different stipulations in the contracts, there's the marketing, there's other pieces, that are separate from you that have to get completed. But on the self-publishing side, I mean, that also varies. It depends. Do you already have an editor? Do you have to find a publisher? Do you have a formatter already? Are these things you have to look for yourself? So again, if you have to research these things, that takes more time. But if you already have access to that, you can save yourself some time there. So there's no right or wrong answer for how long it takes. It just depends on various factors, such as the ones I just shared. And there was a second question.
How do you, okay, so is it an expensive process, and how do you help people see the value added and actually making that investment in themselves? Honestly, it's an
For sure.
investment in
For
yourself.
sure. It can be expensive for sure. Editing is typically the most expensive process, or the most expensive part of the publishing. So it does, it can be quite pricey, but you pay for what you get. So there are cheap editors. There are editors who don't charge as much, but again, you have to do your due diligence. You have to vet your editors. Are they providing you with quality editing? So you may have been able to get 200 pages edited for $50, but what does that manuscript look like?
I don't know
Are
if I
there
would want that one. That might be
right?
a little too cheap.
Yeah. Are there typos? Is the font the same throughout the document? Is the formatting off? Is the grammar right? So you have to be willing to see the value in it. You want to present a book that is readable. You want your target market to enjoy your book. If they pick up the book and they read the first 3 pages and there's 16 typos in the first 3 pages, they're probably not going to buy your book. So it's really important to see the value in editing, and it helps with your branding as well. That's going to influence how you're perceived. That's going to influence your reputation as an author and as a business owner, if you happen to be a business owner. And actually, being an author is being a business owner. So, excuse me. So you have to recognize that you want your book to put your best foot forward. You want to be taken seriously. You want to be considered professional. You want to be considered, maybe a leader in your field. You want people to ask you to come and speak based on your book. What do you want out of it? What are your goals? So you have to make sure that you invest in the editing so it aligns with your goals and your desired outcome. And a lot of it can be tied back to, like you said, the willingness to invest in yourself and also having self-esteem. Do you feel like you're worthy of, a properly edited book? Do you feel like you deserved, to have a book that should be in Barnes and Nobles or in the libraries or in the hands of students or in the hands of women at domestic violence centers, or things like that? So you really have to sit down and decide, I'm worth this. This is important to me. Is it important to you? How important is it to you? If you just want to publish a book to say you're an author, then go ahead and spend $50 on that 200 pages. If if you're just doing it to say you did it, then put some stick figures on your book cover. But again, those are questions you have to answer for yourself, and depending on what your goals are, you'll make the decision that you feel is best for you. But I always say that editing is an investment, not an expense. You're getting intangible benefits from having your book edited. Again, it influences your reputation. Does your target market want to pick up your book? What other opportunities can come out of you publishing that book? I did see someone ask about how to get your book in stores and online for distribution.
Yes.
So there are lots of book marketing professionals who specialize in that. So they'll get you on podcasts, they can get you on TV, they'll get your books in libraries. I actually worked with a virtual assistant, but she did help with book marketing. So she was able to get my book in some of the local libraries. And once they're in the libraries, there's opportunities for you to be a guest speaker, which I've done as well. So you can work with a book marketer who specializes in that, or a book publicist. There's plenty of them out there. Or, if you'd like to do it yourself, you can do it yourself. I've done quite a bit on my own. So podcasts such as this, or there's lots of opportunities to be like have a featured blog. So if somebody's looking for blog writers, you can be a guest on their blog. You can also, collaborate with other authors and professionals. So there are lots of opportunities that can come out of your book if it's well written and it's published properly. So you should definitely take that seriously. So yes, there are plenty of people to help you with marketing your book. And then of course you can do your own book marketing as well.
I mean, I'm even inspired. I might be contacting you soon myself, and I think we have quite a few other people who feel the same way, honestly. But, guys, don't let your past dictate your future. So I really want, after we end this conversation, I want everybody to take a look in the mirror. Think about your vision for yourself. What's your vision for your life? What's the legacy that you want to leave? What's the story that you want your children to tell about you? Are we changing our whole, generational? Can you still hear me? Oh, okay. Are we changing our whole entire, generational line and the story that's going to be told about our bloodline, decades from now? And so, this is not just, a light conversation about having a book and just putting it in your on your desk or in your home office. Your stories can really help people. But like Katara said, you have to look in the mirror and realize that there's value in you. And so, a lot of us, we can spend a lot of money on a really nice car or a fancy blazer, or just, you just never know what it is. But, being able to own yourself and go through and own your own story and go through this whole entire process, just talking about it feels empowering. So I can only imagine seeing your name written on the book with your own authentic story, being able to help other people, what that is going to resonate, what kind of feeling that's going to resonate for people. So if you are here, I know without a shadow of a doubt that you have an interest. And so I want to make sure we're going to always share CaTyra's information in the chats. So you can go to her website and also send her a message. Her contact email and phone number is all on her website. So if you have any questions that were not covered here in this discussion, hopefully you were getting most of them, were able to get most of them answered. But don't hesitate to reach out to her, and ask your questions and make sure that you're as informed as possible.
For sure.
Yeah. So I mean, my goodness, I mean, you shared a ton with us. This was honestly fantastic. I really, really thank you. And so this is the beauty of other people stepping into their truth. You stepped into your truth, and have written eight books, and now you're here inspiring all of us. Yeah, yeah. So do you have any other tips or anything like that you'd like to share?
I would just say through your dreams or goals. Sometimes it's easier said than done. There are people who may discourage you, but just know you were placed on earth for a reason. So don't waste your opportunity. Don't waste your talent and your gifts. And don't hide your strengths and don't dim your light to appease others or make other people feel comfortable. My favorite poem is Marianne Williamson. Oh my goodness, I can't think of the name of it now. But basically throughout the poem, she's just talking about, you should not dim your light for the satisfaction of others, and that we all have a light that should shine, and that we should not feel intimidated by others' lights and others' talents and strengths, and that we should feel inspired and strengthened and empowered by each other. And the brighter we all shine, the better the world will be. So those are my parting words.
Oh, that's amazing. That is so amazing. I love that. Oh my goodness. Yes, Jacqueline says she's familiar. She's my fave. We are not inadequate. Yeah, I mean, we can't end, honestly. That's exactly what it is. We have to walk in our truth and take up space and be authentically who we are. So get out of your own way, queens. If you are watching this discussion, get out of your own way, because we are a community of people that are here to rally behind you and help you. And so if you have someone that's telling you that your story isn't valid and it's not powerful, that is not your friend, that is not your ally. Anybody, if you have a dream and the person on the other end of your conversation is not asking you how they can help you, then end that conversation and end that relationship immediately. And so that's what I definitely want to say. So CaTyra, if you can tell me how people can get in contact with you.
Yes.
for future questions, I definitely appreciate it.
For sure. You can visit my website, polandllc.com. You can schedule a free consultation if you have questions. You can also email me, poland@polandllc.com. If you'd like to be a guest on Editor Knows Best, the podcast, you can also access that information on polandllc.com.
Awesome. I'm so grateful for you. We will definitely keep in touch.
For sure.
You all
Thank
have
you.
the information. Let's all keep, stay in touch and keep each other, involved in the process. And so let's encourage each other. So if anyone here is tuned into our show and you're not familiar with our show, we are a women's empowerment platform called Bloom, and we host discussions about health, wealth, beauty, confidence, and self-love. And so the entire purpose of our show is making you feel empowered with information and resources to support you along your journey to becoming the best version of yourself that you can be. So I want to encourage everyone that's here today to go on our website, whatwouldbloomdo.com. You can check out our podcast. We have articles. So whatwouldbloomdo.com/podcast. And you will be able to see an array of other guests that we've had on our show that have shared empowering information. So we are all about getting behind each other and supporting each other. And so I am so grateful to have you here as our guest today for sharing your knowledge. We will definitely have to touch base with you again soon. And thank you guys so much. I love you all. And thank you for blooming with us today. Y'all have a great night.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.